Now call on Alex Rowley. 8 minutes, please, Mr Rowley.
Presiding Officer, thanks very much. As Mary Fee said, there are three big issues here that are being debated today: public services, tackling inequality and growing Scotland's economy. And in the time we've had today, we've been able to give some justice. But I certainly look forward to the debate over the next 4 months, and I do hope that these are the big issues that we will be debating as we go forward into the Scottish general election. If I can reflect on today and perhaps start with Ruth Davison and the comments she made earlier about making the play to be the official opposition in Scotland. And I would have to say to her that for the first time in more than half a century, we have absolute poverty in communities the length and breadth of Scotland, and that is absolutely down to the policies of the Tory government. So I don't know about the SNP bad, but I certainly know the policies and what the Tories stand for in Scotland are bad, and I'm sure the people of Scotland will recognise that at the polls in May. If I could turn to Bruce Crawford, and Bruce Crawford talked about SNP bad. I thought that actually it was the SNP that came up with that term, SNP bad. So if you're unhappy with that, Bruce, you need to give a ticking off to your own party. But can I say, Bruce Crawford also talked about the record number. He talked about flights and the air passenger duty, and he couldn't understand why Labour would oppose that. We have in Scotland right now record numbers of flights. We have the air companies in Scotland reaping the record low levels of fuel costs. And at a time when we have that, and at the same time we have, which will cost us, the air passenger duty will cost us millions upon millions upon millions of pounds. At the same time as that, well, you're willing to spend hundreds of millions of pounds on a tax cut in an area that, yeah, in good times it would be fine to do. We are seeing hundreds of millions of pounds being cut for public services right across Scotland. So that is the choice, and for me that choice every day will be to invest in public services. Like Kevin Stewart, he said he wanted to concentrate on what Nicola Sturgeon have to say, and I will do likewise. I certainly am someone who tends to believe that my glass is always half full, and where I see policy and I see investment, then I will welcome that investment. If we take, for example, in terms of health and social care, I have raised with the Deputy First Minister on a number of occasions the need to shift funding for health into health and social care, recognising that community care does not come on the cheap. And I have welcomed the fact in his budget that he has said he intends to do that. So I would welcome that today. But I would say that there is a further crisis in social care, and it comes to another point that the First Minister raised, which is the living wage. And she rightly highlights the success in terms of more and more companies actually introducing the living wage. But that is causing problems in some sectors, particularly in health and social care, where if they are to raise the living wage, then they need to find that money for some place. Given that the majority of monies going in to health and social care come in through the public sector, then it is the responsibility of government, if we want to see health and social care, if we want to see care workers up and down Scotland paid a decent wage, the living wage, then we need to recognise that it is the responsibility of government to put money into that. That is an area where Labour in Scotland have said that we will fund the introduction of a living wage right across the care sector in Scotland, and I certainly hope that that is something that the SNP would consider doing with us. And it is also about recognising, in terms of the economy, where in the short term we can grow jobs in the economy. One of those such areas is absolutely the care sector. I read this morning about a company in Fife that was reporting losses for the first time in the care sector, and one of the reasons that they put down for that was the use of agency staff. And the reason that they're having to recruit and bring in agency staff is because there is a major problem with recruitment and retention in the care sector. So we need to recognise that by investing in the living wage, we would also be investing in quality care and social care across Scotland, but at the same time we would be growing the economy and growing jobs. And the case for that is absolutely there. Because for me, in terms of the economy, the key issue is jobs. Good jobs for young people, jobs for long-term unemployed, jobs that are quality jobs, jobs that will last, jobs that we can build our future around. And that is why today what we need in Scotland is a strategy for jobs, to ensure that we can give everybody the opportunity and that we are ambitious not just for some of the people in Scotland, but ambitious for all the people in Scotland.
Mary Scanlon.
I agree that the funding of social care, whether it's home care or a residential care, should be the same whether the person is in a council-run home or an independently run home. That would allow every care worker to be paid the living wage.
Alex Rowley.
Well, I don't, but it's a different debate and perhaps not one I've got time for today. Can I also welcome the fact, and I actually wrote to the Housing Minister back on the 2nd of December, and I welcomed the fact that Nicola Sturgeon had confirmed that there was a commitment from the Government to 50,000 houses for rent. I now see that that's affordable housing. I would urge that Shelter Scotland and others have talked about the need for 50,000 houses for rent, 50,000 social houses for rent. I've not got the time, sorry. So I welcomed that fact then. I wrote to the Housing Minister then, and I set out a number of proposals. The First Minister constantly says, if you have any ideas, if you have any thoughts, bring them to us. In a very positive way, I wrote to the House Minister then, and I suggested to her that what we need to do, if there is a consensus in Scotland, Shelter Scotland tell us that there is a housing crisis in Scotland. We know that from the starts. There were 150,000 households and local authority waiting lists across Scotland as at the 31st of March this year.
First Minister.
I agree with him about the importance of housing supply, which is why we've committed to 50,000 affordable houses over the next Parliament. I wonder if Alex Rowley could explain why his pledge on housing today is nothing to do with housing supply, why Labour have still said nothing about increasing housing supply in Scotland.
Alex Rowley.
Because it's one part of housing for Labour in Scotland is a big issue, and we will be talking about housing and bringing forward more proposals for housing in the coming weeks and the coming months, and I hope that we can have a debate on housing in Scotland. One part of that, as was announced today by Kezia Dugdale, our leader, is that we will help young people be able to get on the housing ladder. For many young people, my constituency, I'm sure your constituency and others, they find it really difficult to be able to have the deposit, to be able to get the mortgage, particularly since the banking crisis. Banks are not actually helping young people. Labour in Scotland will help young people get houses, but we're equally clear Labour in Scotland will build houses and will ensure, in partnership with local authorities, that we build social houses for rent, recognising, as Shelter Scotland has put forward, we have a housing crisis. Presiding Officer, I will wind up by saying where I started. My glass is always half full. I want, and Labour in Scotland wants, to work with any party in this chamber where we can tackle inequality, get good public services and create jobs so that we share the wealth throughout the whole of Scotland.